I had been waiting for this family reunion for months. The house in Brighton was huge, with ivy climbing the walls and a wide garden where the kids ran laughing, chasing each other like they had no care in the world. Inside, the smell of roast beef, baked potatoes, and fresh bread filled the air, and the sound of clinking glasses mixed with a hum of conversation. My sister, Molly, had organized everything perfectly, making sure everyone from Europe and America could be here. I had been excited to see cousins I hadn't met in years and to catch up with the adults I remembered from childhood, but there was a knot in my stomach I couldn't shake. After dinner, while the family gathered in the living room, I quietly stepped aside to check my phone. My fingers trembled as I opened my banking app. My heart dropped. My account balance, it was gone. Every dollar I thought I had saved was just gone. I stared at the screen, unable to believe it. "Everything okay?" Molly asked from across the room, noticing my pale face. I forced a smile, but before I could answer, Gareth, my brother-in-law from America, leaned back in his chair and snorted. "We needed it more than you," he said, laughing as if I were overreacting. The words hit me harder than I expected. My hands clenched into fists, and I felt the room spin slightly. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Trembling, I reached for my bag. "Then you won't mind what's coming next," I said quietly, my voice shaking but firm. They laughed, thinking I was joking. But deep down, I knew they had no idea what was about to happen. I barely slept that night. Even with the warm lights of the house in Brighton casting shadows across the living room, my mind refused to rest. The thought of my empty bank account gnawed at me. Every time I glanced at Gareth, my brother-in-law, I saw that smirk still etched across his face, as if he already owned my misfortune. My sister Molly, always the optimist, chatted happily with our cousins in the next room, unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I knew I had to act, but I didn't know how. By mid-morning, I had convinced myself to face them. I couldn't let fear control me. Trembling, I reached for my bag, the weight of it grounding me. "Then you won't mind what's coming next," I said, my voice low and trembling just enough to make them think I was joking. Gareth laughed, leaning back in his chair as if daring me to follow through. "What's coming next?" "You're funny," he said. A few of the cousins chuckled, and Molly gave me a worried look, her brow furrowed. I swallowed hard. No one could know how serious I was. The wind picked up outside, rattling the window panes. A strange sense of unease settled in my chest, heavier than the empty feeling in my wallet. I could hear the faint creak of the old wooden floors as footsteps moved in the hallway outside. "Probably just the house settling," Gareth muttered, but I knew better. I had felt it. A presence, something watching us, something waiting. I tightened my grip on my bag and edged toward the door. Suddenly, a loud bang shook the house. I stumbled back, heart hammering in my chest. Everyone froze, their laughter dying instantly. The sound echoed through the tall ceilings of the living room, making the walls vibrate. The door at the end of the hallway swung open violently, slamming against the wall. Papers and napkins from breakfast scattered into the air like leaves in a storm. The room went silent. Gareth's smirk vanished. Molly's eyes widened in alarm. I felt my stomach twist with a mix of fear and adrenaline. Someone, or something, had entered the house. My instinct screamed at me to move, to act, to protect what was mine. A figure stepped through the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with a dark coat that flapped in the wind. I couldn't see his face clearly, but there was an aura about him, something that made me want to both run and approach at the same time. The entire family held their breath, the tension so thick it felt like it could snap the old beams of the house. Gareth, always quick to assert himself, tried to step forward. Who are you?" he demanded, though his voice quavered. I grabbed his arm and whispered sharply, "Don't." My voice was barely audible, but the warning was enough. Even he understood that this was different. The man didn't speak. He simply reached into his coat and pulled out a small, heavy briefcase. He set it carefully on the floor, the metallic clang echoing through the hall. My heart thudded in my ears. I stepped closer, my legs shaking. My instincts told me to grab it, to see what it contained. When I opened the briefcase, my eyes widened. Inside were neat stacks of money, dollars and pounds, more than I had ever seen in my life. There must have been at least £10,000 and $25,000, all perfectly organized. I couldn't understand why someone would leave this here, in this house, at this moment. The man stepped back into the doorway. A gust of wind from outside flared, scattering my hair across my face. Then, Without a word, he turned and disappeared into the swirling shadows of the garden. I wanted to call after him, to ask who he was or why he had brought the money, but my voice caught in my throat. Everyone stared at me. Gareth's face was pale, the color drained from his cheeks. Molly stepped forward cautiously, her hands trembling. Who was that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," I admitted, my own voice shaking. "But I think this was meant for me." The words sounded strange even as I spoke them. Could it really be possible that someone had corrected what had been taken from me? Or was it a trap, something dangerous waiting for me to make a mistake? Gareth finally recovered enough to speak, but his usual arrogance had vanished. It doesn't make sense," he said, staring at the briefcase as if willing it to vanish. "Why would anyone just leave that much money here?" I shook my head slowly, trying to steady my racing thoughts. "Sometimes," I said, "things happen that we don't understand. Sometimes, the world has a strange way of giving back what was lost, but it's not always clean or easy." Molly glanced at me, confusion and concern mixing in her eyes. "You think it's safe?" she asked cautiously. I looked down at the money, my fingers brushing the crisp bills. The fear still pulsed through me, but so did a strange sense of relief. "I think, for now," I said. "But we need to be careful. This isn't over." The wind continued to howl outside, rattling the windows and shaking the house. The echo of that loud bang lingered in my ears. And in that moment, I realized that this reunion, which I had imagined as warm and joyful, had transformed into something entirely different, something dangerous, thrilling, and filled with questions I wasn't ready to answer. I tucked the briefcase under my arm, feeling the weight of it, and glanced at my family. Gareth avoided my eyes, Molly's hands were trembling, and the cousins had retreated to the far corner of the room. I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. And deep down, I understood that the events of this day were just the beginning. The briefcase still weighed heavily in my hands as I tried to steady my breathing. Every creak of the house, every whisper of wind outside, made me jump. I could feel Gareth behind me, shifting nervously, as if expecting the figure from the hallway to reappear at any moment. Molly clutched my arm, her grip tight, her knuckles white. "What are we going to do?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. The only thing I knew was that the money in that briefcase had changed everything. I decided to lock the front door, even though the gusting wind had caused it to rattle violently in its frame. I could still see the shadow of the garden outside, and my gut told me that the man hadn't left the property entirely. I couldn't explain it, an instinct, pure and undeniable, telling me that he was still watching, waiting for the right moment. Gareth, trying to regain some authority, crossed his arms. "We should call the police," he suggested, his voice wavering. I looked at him sharply. "And tell them what? That some mysterious stranger just left us $25,000 and £10,000? They'd think we were crazy." He hesitated, unsure how to respond. I could feel the tension rising, thickening like fog in the room. Then came a sound that made my blood run cold, a tap on the window at the back of the house. I spun around. There, silhouetted against the night sky, was the tall figure, his dark coat catching the moonlight. He raised a gloved hand, pointed at me, and then disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. My heart thundered in my chest. Molly gasped. His back. I didn't answer. I just knew we couldn't wait. We had to move. I grabbed the briefcase and gestured for everyone to follow me. "Through the side door," I whispered, quietly. We crept through the kitchen, avoiding the main hallway where the figure had entered. Gareth, usually full of bravado, stumbled over a rug, muttering under his breath. Molly hissed at him to be quiet. I led the way into the garden, the grass wet with dew. The night was colder than I expected, and every shadow seemed alive. I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting the figure to appear again. Suddenly, a car pulled up silently at the edge of the property. Its headlights were off, but I could see the outline of someone inside. My stomach clenched. "That's him," I whispered. "Or someone working with him." Before anyone could stop me, I ran toward the car, clutching the briefcase. Molly called my name, but I couldn't stop. Fear and determination pushed me forward. Gareth followed reluctantly, shouting warnings, but the car's doors opened, and the figure stepped out, blocking my path. I froze, my hands shaking. The man was taller than I remembered, and his presence was almost overwhelming. He didn't speak, but I understood that he wasn't here to hurt us, at least, not physically. He simply gestured toward the briefcase in my hands and then toward a narrow lane leading away from the house. Something inside me clicked. This wasn't just about the money, it was a test. I took a deep breath and nodded. Slowly, I set the briefcase down. "All right," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "I'll follow your rules. Just tell me what you want." He didn't answer. Instead, he gestured for us to move. Gareth muttered angrily, "I don't trust this, not one bit," but I ignored him. Molly stayed close, holding my arm, and we followed the figure into the lane, the briefcase now lying in the grass. As we moved further from the house, the city lights of Brighton glimmered in the distance. The streets were empty, silent except for the crunch of our footsteps. I wondered who this man was and why he had chosen me. Every step felt like walking deeper into a puzzle I wasn't sure I could solve. We reached a small alleyway where the figure finally stopped. He turned to me and, for the first time, spoke. "You've been chosen because you understand value, not just money, but responsibility. That briefcase isn't just cash. It's a test of character." I blinked. "A test? What do you mean?" He gestured toward the briefcase. "It's yours to claim, but only if you prove you can protect it, share it wisely, and not let greed destroy you. Others will come. You must be ready." I glanced back at my family. Gareth looked furious and confused. Molly's eyes were wide with fear and wonder. I realized that this was bigger than any of us had imagined. The figure stepped back into the shadows and vanished, leaving only the faint sound of his coat flapping in the night. I picked up the briefcase, my fingers trembling again, but now with purpose. "We need to get back home," I said. "We need to figure out what this is really about." Molly nodded, her hand brushing mine. "I trust you," she said softly. Gareth, grumbling, followed, but I could tell even he was shaken. By the time we reached the house, the lights inside felt different. Warmer, safer, yet tinged with uncertainty. The briefcase on the table seemed heavier now, not because of the money, but because of what it represented. Responsibility, trust, and danger. I knew that whatever came next, we couldn't treat this as just a family reunion anymore. That night, the house in Brighton didn't feel like home. It felt like the starting line of something that would change our lives forever. The night was quiet, almost too quiet, after we returned to the house in Brighton. The lights inside felt warmer now, but a lingering unease clung to every shadow. The briefcase sat on the dining table, its presence commanding attention. I could hear Gareth muttering under his breath, pacing the room like a caged animal, and Molly sitting quietly, still holding her hands together as if the act alone could shield her from whatever had just happened. I opened the briefcase once more, staring at the stacks of dollars and pounds. They felt different now, not just pieces of paper, but symbols of a challenge I couldn't ignore. I had no idea who the man was, or why he had chosen me, but I understood one thing. He believed I was capable of handling this. That alone made my pulse race. Gareth finally stopped pacing. "I still don't get it," he said, voice rough. "Why leave that much money here? Why leave us out of it? This is crazy." He pointed toward the briefcase. "And you, how do we know this isn't a trap? Someone could be watching us right now." I met his gaze steadily. "That's exactly why we can't panic. If we let fear control us, we lose. We need to think carefully." My voice was calm, even though my hands trembled slightly as I smoothed the bills in the briefcase. Gareth looked unconvinced, but Molly nodded in agreement, her face pale but determined. 4 hours, we sat together, discussing what to do. I realized the money was more than a gift, it was a test of judgment. I had always prided myself on being careful with finances, with decisions, with my life, but this was on another level entirely. Whoever had delivered it wanted to see how we would handle the unexpected, the extraordinary, the dangerous. Suddenly, a sound from the front door made all of us jump. The same loud bang from before echoed through the house, and I felt my stomach twist. I grabbed the briefcase instinctively, standing protectively in front of it. But when I opened the door, no one was there, only a single envelope lying on the welcome mat. I picked it up and opened it cautiously. Inside was a note written in elegant handwriting. "You have passed the first test. The money is yours to use wisely. The next step begins tomorrow. Trust no one outside your family. The Guardian." I read it aloud, and my voice shook. "The Guardian? That must be the man from earlier." Molly's eyes widened. "Step 2? What could that mean?" Gareth ran a hand through his hair, frustration and fear battling on his face.
This is insane. We're being manipulated. I don't like it. I set my jaw.
Maybe not, I said firmly, but the money is here. And if the Guardian trusted me to handle it, then I have to try.
The weight of responsibility pressed down on me.
It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about proving that I could act with courage, intelligence, and control. The next morning, I decided to investigate. I drove to the city center of Brighton, hoping to find any clue about the Guardian. While walking the streets, my mind kept returning to the briefcase, to the mysterious figure, and to the sudden arrival of the envelope. Every detail seemed calculated, deliberate. I entered a small cafe tucked in a corner, thinking it might be a place the Guardian would use as a drop point. That's when I saw him, or someone unmistakably like him, sitting at a table by the window, a newspaper in hand but eyes fixed on me. My heart raced. I approached slowly. "Are you the Guardian?" I asked, my voice low. The man stood, tall and imposing, but there was something familiar in his stance. "I am," he said simply, his voice calm but commanding. "You have proven discretion and courage. That briefcase was a test. Now comes the real challenge." I clenched my fists. "What do you mean?" I thought the money was the challenge. He shook his head. "Money is only the first step. The Guardian's role is to teach responsibility, judgment, and resilience. There are others who will try to claim what is not theirs. You must protect your family and the assets entrusted to you. Decisions you make now will affect not just you, but everyone around you." I swallowed hard. "So, this is about more than money." "Much more," he said. "It's about proving you can lead, protect, and make difficult choices. Wealth alone is meaningless without wisdom." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a family reunion gone wrong. It was a life lesson, one I had been chosen to face. I glanced at Molly, who stood close behind me, and Gareth, who reluctantly followed. I realized that we were in this together, whether he liked it or not. Over the next few days, the Guardian returned intermittently, delivering small challenges, clues hidden in plain sight, instructions for careful investments, and moral dilemmas that tested our trust in one another. Every time, I felt more confident in my judgment. I discovered strengths I didn't know I had and weaknesses that needed confronting. Gareth's skepticism softened slowly as he saw that my decisions were sound, deliberate, and fair. Molly's support never wavered, giving me courage when I faltered. By the end of the week, the Guardian appeared one last time. He handed me a final envelope. "You have succeeded," he said. "The money and the responsibility are now yours entirely. Protect it, use it wisely, and remember, character matters more than wealth." I opened the envelope to find a note and a set of instructions for charitable donations, investments, and planning for emergencies. It was practical, carefully thought out, and reinforced the lesson the Guardian had been teaching all along. I looked around at my family. Gareth, surprisingly, smiled. "I'll admit it," he said. "You handled all of this better than I ever could have imagined." Molly hugged me tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you." For the first time since the reunion began, I felt a deep sense of relief. The house in Brighton no longer felt like a place of fear or uncertainty. It felt like the center of something extraordinary, a place where lessons had been learned, trust had been tested, and my family had grown stronger. I realized that the Guardian wasn't just a mysterious stranger, he was a catalyst for change. And I was no longer the person who had checked my empty bank account in despair. I was someone who had faced fear, taken responsibility, and emerged stronger. As the sun rose over Brighton, casting golden light across the ivy-covered house, I tucked the briefcase away safely, feeling both powerful and humbled. The events of the past week had tested me in ways I could never have imagined. And though the future remained uncertain, I knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever take my family or my integrity from me again. And for the first time, I truly understood what it meant to be entrusted with something greater than money, something far more valuable: trust, responsibility, and the courage to face the unknown.